Here I am in TextEdit, and we're going to now look at the options in the pop-up menu in the Save dialog. As I mentioned before, what you see in the Save dialog, in the basic Save dialog, it's pretty much the same for every application. But for the options, particularly including the pop-up options here, what you see is a combination of the printer that's selected and the application that's running. Here it's TextEdit, and I have a single page with a very small amount of text on it. In the pop-up menu, the first set of options are specific to that application. So here are the TextEdit settings, and they let you print a header and footer. You notice here they're generated automatically if I choose that option. Then I get into several settings that have to do with paper. I can choose how many pages are printed per sheet. And this really matters if you're doing a book, because if you're doing a book, you print on very large pieces of paper, and there are multiple pages on each one, and then gigantic machines fold and cut the paper so that you have individual pages. That's how books are done. You can also do that for smaller things. You can take a regular piece of paper and print 4 copies of an imitation, let's say, on it, and fold them in these various ways. You can choose to have a border around the page images, and you can also choose to print pages in reverse. So those are the layout options. We'll skip over color matching for a moment and go to paper handling. By default, you usually print all pages, but you can choose odd or even pages. One reason to do this is that if your printer does not support two-sided printing, you can print all the odd-numbered pages and then turn that stack of paper over and print the even-numbered pages in reverse, depending on the order in which your printer has put out the pages. So that's how you do two-sided printing on a printer that doesn't support what's called duplex printing. You can have a cover page for the print job, which will give you information about what's done there. You can use billing information, collect this, put all of those cover pages somewhere away in a file, and then bill back charges if you want to. And you can schedule when the document is to be printed. It's very useful, perhaps, to print large print jobs and put them all on hold, and then just before you leave for the day or when you go to lunch, then go through those jobs in the print queue and release them. Then we get into how you match the color. The color on the page is never going to look the same as the color on the screen, because printed colors are very different from backlit colors, which are what you're seeing on the screen. So you can choose what method you want, and this is the method that Apple uses by default, but vendors, particularly of inkjet color printers, have their own options you can choose. When you get into quality and media, this is generally printer specific. I'm using an inkjet printer here, which supports different printing styles for different types of paper depending on how glossy it is and so forth. So this printer has a lot of options here that you may not find with other printers, and you can control where the paper comes from, and you can indicate what sort of thing it is that's being printed here, whether it's a photo or something that doesn't need such high quality. Additional options again are dependent on the printer. This printer supports a lot of color options. I can choose them. There are various options that can be chosen here. Experiment with them. You see the thumbnail here changing as you go through them. You can print in some printers to the edge of the paper, and some printers will support duplex, that is to say two-sided printing, and you can indicate how the pages are going to be bound so that the images on the front and back are placed in the same relative position to the binding. One image will have to be a little bit to the right, and on the other side it'll have to be a little to the left, so that when they are bound together, if you hold the page up to the light, you will see that the images on both sides of the paper are exactly on top of one another. So those are the options for duplex printing, and then you can come down here and look at the summary, and if you want, you can then save your settings and give them a name. If I go into Preview and choose to print, you'll see that I have the same basic dialog, and I have these options, and the ones that are dependent on the printer are the same. However, instead of text edit down here, I have a set of options specifically for Preview, and in part because Preview is usually printing images rather than text, I have a different set of options down here, such as the ability to scale the image. I can also print multiple images per page like this, which is not quite the same as layout, because here what I'm doing is I'm printing multiple pages per sheet. Here, on a single page, I'm printing 4 images, and if I combined this with this, what I would wind up with is 4 pages, each of which contains 4 images. This is something that could give you a headache if you think about it too much. But the point is that each application has its own set of options that you can include in your print job.